Hello and welcome to another edition of the UK Column Live. It's the 17th of August, the sun is shining somewhere above the clouds, and I'm here with Brian and we'll be discussing today's news. How are you, Brian?
Well, I'm feeling very good today. We had a very late night last night, having done a talk with the Penzance Truth Movement, and I've got to say what an extraordinary group of people. We had over 60 people in the audience. A lot of people keen to know what was going on. We were talking about the issue of children, what's happening with social services and children's services in the country, and this fantastic statistic that a child is taken from their parents every 22 minutes. So a very serious talk, but the key thing was the group of people in Penzance put a huge amount of effort into setting it up, and clearly huge amount of enthusiasm for getting the truth out there. So I think UK Column would like to say thank you very much to all the people who helped organise that. And we're starting to see a pattern here of groups appearing across UK, not connected with any political parties, but simply ordinary good people who want to get the truth out. What I should just mention is, of course, it was a beautiful August evening when we got down to Penzance. And we've got a little nostalgic first picture showing the weather on the seafront at Penzance. This is the first August that I've ever had to peel the seaweed off my car following a visit to sunny Cornwall. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think a very enjoyable night, and as you said, the atmosphere was great, even considering the the seriousness of the topic.
It shows you what people can do, and really what people should be doing now across the country is digging out the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, what do we start with?
Well, we've started off this afternoon. I nearly got it wrong again, with a serious subject, which is really what's going on between Israel and Iran. So the slide here is taken from the Mail, where there's quite a good article. It's worth reading. And what the Mail is flagging up is that a retired general who was a deputy chief of staff, his name's Matan Vinay, he's just actually stepped down as Home Front cabinet minister, and he's been appointed as Israel's ambassador to China. But he's been making some very serious warnings about what is likely to happen if there is an Israeli preemptive strike on Iran. He's basically said that if there is an attack on Iran's nuclear program, that this could trigger a bloody month-long war on multiple fronts, killing hundreds of Israelis. Later on in the article, this gentleman is quoted as saying that he believes that casualties in Israel could be as high as 500, and that Israel would anticipate that the retaliation from Iran would include hundreds of rockets falling on Israel. I think this article is extremely interesting, that whilst on one hand we're seeing from senior Israeli ministers and cabinet officials that there is this overwhelming desire for an attack on Iran, supposedly to stop Iranian nuclear capability. But we've also now seen a number of senior and very experienced Israeli officials who are also warning of the disastrous consequences of that action. So I think this is an important article. After all, it's talking about war with the possibility of nuclear war, and it is quite remarkable that this article is really buried, if we look across all of the mainstream press, in what we can only describe as dross articles. Certainly, the Express has at least 5 articles which are all to do with ageing pop stars, Elton John. We've got papers reporting on the jailing of the Russian female punk group, and tucked in amongst this we've got this incredibly serious situation still in the Middle East, and many would say that we are seeing Israel actually stoking up the tension between Israel and Iran. So I think that viewers should keep their finger on the pulse with what's happening here, because there's much going on behind the scenes which mainstream are not reporting.
Which would certainly have a huge impact on not only people in Israel and Iran, but also people living in this country as well. When we consider, obviously, you would imagine that somewhere along the line, America, maybe Britain might get involved. But not only that, you've got the price of oil would skyrocket. You know, there'd be massive implications of such a war, wouldn't there?
Absolutely. And to date, we know, and the UK column has consistently reported on the fact that we have had not only senior ministers such as Liam Fox going to meetings, including Israelis, talking about what could happen in the Middle East, but we've had senior British military officers also going to meetings, which I'm going to say are largely secret because nothing has been revealed in detail as to what discussions have taken place. But what we see is that Israel seems to be taking the lead and Britain and America are following along behind. And there is something rather unnerving that living in Britain in 2012, we now have a Prime Minister, David Cameron, who says his belief in Israel is unshakable, and therefore presumably he's going to continue to back Israel whatever action Israel should see fit to take. The question the UK column is consistently asking is, who is Mr Cameron representing? Is he representing the British people or is he representing Israel? It's a very interesting point.
Very poignant question.
So the second topic that we've got here is to do with WikiLeaks, and we've taken a headline from the Mail again, where Julian Assange has been, well, Hague is the man. William Hague is saying that Julian Assange will not be given safe passage out of UK.
Yeah, I think the understanding is that Hague does not believe that the crimes that he's allegedly been, or that Sweden has alleged against Assange, doesn't constitute refugee status because it's not a political crime as such. It's more of a criminal crime. And so I think Mr Hague is saying that therefore he shouldn't be granted refugee status and therefore he's not allowed asylum with Ecuador.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we look back over time, we've consistently seen people with what would be regarded as criminal backgrounds. Pinochet would be one of them that comes to mind. But we've also seen several key members of Saddam's Iraqi regime brought into Britain and put in very comfortable and protective accommodation, largely unbeknown to many British taxpayers.
Certainly.
But on the subject of this man, there is obviously it's almost vicious, isn't it, attempt by the British government to lever him out of the Ecuadorian embassy.
Absolutely, and as we know that the sort of extradition ties they have with America, and it's no doubt that Julian Assange is very concerned. I would be too. Yeah.
As to whether he's going to ultimately get a fair trial for what he's done. Yeah. Now, what we found very interesting was that Ecuador's Foreign Minister, Ricardo Patino, had announced that Ecuador would grant asylum. But he also went on to make some other statements. He went on to say that he hoped friendship with the UK would remain intact. And if I just quote him here, he says, "We share the respect for the same values of human rights, democracy and peace, which are only possible once fundamental human rights are respected." Now, this is, I think, a statement by this gentleman which the UK column would applaud, because we've recently, and indeed yesterday with Roger Hayes from the British Constitution Group with us, we've been specifically looking at what the human rights and democracy record of UK is, in particular in the courts. And what is blatantly obvious is that Britain at the moment, under Cameron's leadership, with the help of Kenneth Clarke and others, we don't have democracy in UK, or at least it's just about on the tipping point. We're about to move
even.
Yeah, we're about to move out of it. And one of the things that the UK column and UK column Live is trying to bring across to people is that whilst we have this sort of national media image that Britain is a fully democratic and law-abiding country. It has a system of law. As we dig into this and expose, what we find is that this is absolutely not the case. No. So we applaud Mr. Patino for what he says, but I don't think that really he wants to be sharing our values of human rights and democracy and peace, because our values at the moment are, well, despicable, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We've just got a picture of Mr. Patino, which we've just put up on screen for you. A clean-cut gentleman. He looks professional. He looks the part. I think Ecuador can be proud of this man standing in the public media spotlight, representing the country. And I'll just follow this up with a picture of William Hague, who at the moment has been effectively threatening Ecuador that they should do what Britain tells them. And I believe that Mr. Patino intends, I suspect it's already been released now, but he has said that he intends to release the threatening letter that he's received from the UK government. But here's a picture of the man that is currently running Britain, William Hague, in his baseball cap following his visit to the fun fair. But this is the state of the man who is currently leading Britain whilst Cameron and Clegg are away on their foreign holidays. So I would like to say from UK Column Live, well done to Ecuador, and we hope that you will continue to stand up for what you believe for your country and not be bullied and intimidated by Mr. William Hague and his baseball cap team.
Indeed, yeah, indeed. I think it's commendable that they recognise the work that Julian has done as well, because obviously there's a much bigger picture going on around this. The allegations, whether they're true or not, would have to be testified in the court. But because of the nature of what he's been doing, I think that's really where his nervousness has come from.
There seems to be a lot of fear, I think, in the international community about the information that this man's put into the public domain.
I think so.
And this is really what's driving it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wait to see how this develops. The next story that I've got here concerns families of 241 US servicemen who were killed in the Beirut bombing have now stepped forward to take civil action. Civil action against Standard & Chartered Bank, because basically they're accusing the bank of not allowing Iran's assets to comply basically with an earlier judgment. So a judgment was made that 2.6 billion in compensatory damages should be awarded to the bombing victims' families, and this action is now claiming that after the 2007 ruling, Standard Chartered Bank conspired with Iran and its agents to hide Iran's assets from its judgment creditors. A Standard Chartered spokeswoman, Julie Gibson, said that the bank's policy is not to discuss pending litigation. Well, I'm sure that's true, but really the important thing here is that the British public and probably the world public are entitled to know exactly what dirty deals the international banks are doing, in the dark. So we wait to see how this develops. But an interesting part of the article is that there's definitely a strong twist by the Mail to keep the rhetoric going against Iran. Yeah. And there's a quote here from the suit. It says, "Those unlawful actions, i.e. by the bank, those unlawful actions are part and parcel of Iran's long-standing, determined efforts to evade collection of the judgment and other judgments obtained by the victims of Iran's ongoing terror campaign." So we'd like to ask the Mail for evidence as to exactly what Iran's ongoing terrorist campaign is.
I find it's an interesting comment, really, when you think that Iran, with exception to the skirmish they had with Iraq, which was obviously not necessarily an invasion on Iran's part. Iran hasn't been at war for a good many centuries now. I think it's 300 years. And you know,
we've had the Iran-Iraq war, of course.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
but there was a skirmish, but it wasn't Iran invading Iraq. There was it was a slightly different issue.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because we, as you say, the continued effort on terror, and yet we have that coming from an institution, a British institution, as well as I'm sure the same thing has been said in America by two states that have, you know, continuously been at war for the better part of, well, in this country for quite a long time, in America even longer.
Yeah.
And it just smacks of hypocrisy, but at the same time, as you say, it's a continuing sort of political effort, both from the mainstream as well as from the government, to highlight Iran as being some sort of terror network, when in fact they haven't actually done anything yet. You know, we can speculate all we want about what they're going to do with their nuclear program, but they haven't actually done anything yet. Yeah. And so we're getting into, I suppose, in some realms, a political thought crime in some ways, because we're accusing them of terrorism when they haven't actually done anything.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And the other thing which we may care to remember, of course, is Britain and America providing the arms during the Iran-Iraq war. Right. So there's much more to this than meets the eye. Well worth reading this story, and for viewers to dig in deeper themselves.
And of course, another bank caught with their fingers in the pot.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the last one from me really is, and it ties in with this as well, thought crime. We've got a mother tagged for taking her 13-year-old son out of school because she said he was being bullied. The lady's Yasmin Dad, 46, says she found her son Rahim cowering in an alleyway after being set upon by tormentors. Right. Now, it's true, well, we're going to accept what the paper says. It's true that he only went to school 42 days in 15 months. But there's a whole series of events which the mother is saying occurred, and she basically took her son out of school because of this. But the thing is that, amongst other things, that this lady is now tagged. So we see that where we have issues with a mother, or parents in this case, and a school, and where does the law come down? The law comes down unbelievably hard on the mother, as she says, because she's tagged and she's restricted in when she can go out. This means that it actually impacts on what she can do for her son anyway. So we are seeing mothers and fathers and other people who stand up and challenge the system, and you of course know this. We're seeing these very severe penalties being awarded by our courts. Meanwhile, in the background, we have politicians and banks doing absolutely as they please, and there is some sort of investigation but no actual result.
No, not at all.
Is it accidental, or is this deliberate policy? I think it's deliberate.
Deliberate. And if we take the article on face value, and the lady did take her child out of school because the child was being bullying, I mean, effectively we're punishing a mother for protecting her children. I mean, the message that it sends out, I think, is a very worrying message.
It is, and this is part of the message in this one. Surprisingly, the Mail felt it necessary to put in a picture which has been posed by models of what bullying is. Right. So the Daily Mail seems to think that the average reader can't actually understand what the word bullying means, and so they've had to use child actors to actually recreate a scene which shows the bullying take place. Yeah. I think there is another agenda in this article. It's almost as if the Mail is trying to push over the idea that if you're not careful as a parent, you're going to get banged up. Yep. Basically. It's a very interesting little article. Last bit, sorry, there was one just more. It's just a headline from the Telegraph, but there's a story about a young French writer who's had the opportunity to travel around with François Hollande, and basically he said that underneath the affable exterior of the French president is a formidable war machine. And I just find this language extremely interesting, because if that's true, we've got a situation where Europe at the moment is facing economic breakdown. We're seeing increasing chaos and trouble on the streets. And now we're saying that we've got a French president in place who is a formidable war machine. And we should also continue to point out that David Cameron has locked Britain into a 50-year defence partnership with France, so we now appear to be locked into a partnership with a war machine. I wonder where that will lead us. What have you got?
Well, after that, I don't know. Well, I've been scouring the BBC and I found two interesting articles today. The first one being about the male contraceptive pill, and that we're now a step closer after my studies. The phrase "Are you a man or a mouse?" comes to mind, but interestingly, the studies which happened in the US showed a drug could make mice temporarily infertile without hampering their sex drive, which I find slightly concerning, because I'm aware that the pill is supposed to make you slightly infertile, in the sense that you obviously can't reproduce. But having obviously have female friends, that when these ladies have been on the pill for a good many years, as a lot of people are, as part of their kind of sexual habits, which is fine. When they come off the pill, they then struggle to conceive for quite a number of years. And having looked at this, I was then drawn or sent an article about polysorbate, polysorbate 80, which basically has been studied and has been found to make people infertile. And this can be found in ice cream, milk products, vitamin tablets, lotions, creams, medical products like vaccines and anti-cancer medications. There is a concern, I think, that there is a drive from particular international political organisations, let's say, that there's a world population that's out of control, and there's a drive for infertility, I think. And I think that this is quite a concerning article when we consider that the drug does make people temporarily infertile. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, of course, one of the things that we know is that the Agenda 21 programme, which has largely been pushed through Britain as a sort of low-level community thing, we need to look after the planet, and we need to recycle, and we need to look after our green countryside. So Agenda 21 programme has actually largely been sold in UK to date on its benefits for planet Earth, but in fact the agenda itself is very much a top-down agenda, which is looking at very precise control under a one world government. And of course, if we look into documents which are circulating within the Agenda 21 programme, and indeed if we start to look at material which is coming out of organisations like the Council for Foreign Relations, we can see documents where they are talking about the desperate need for a dramatic reduction in the world population. We saw a little while ago, I think both government and there was certainly global corporations involved. There was an initiative which was talking about bringing new programs of contraception into Africa. That's combined with a huge drive for more vaccines to go into Africa. And yes, we are seeing many people who are studying what's going on in the vaccine system also reporting that they're seeing sterility or infertility resulting. So again, I think we would say that this article by the BBC, you have to ask yourself, what exactly is going on? Why are they trying to develop these things? On the subject of mice, we decided we'd just raise people's attention to really what's being done to mice at the moment. This is showing a Shanghai scientist who's proudly showing his ability to grow an ear on the back of a mouse. This has been done before. But there really isn't any comment at the moment on the morality of this type of research. People growing ears on the back of mice, we're looking at very key issues of human fertility. Who are the people who are actually doing this Frankenstein type research?
Indeed.
It's quite worrying.
Indeed. And just very quickly, just finish off just to say that while the tests have been carried out on mice, which is inconclusive regarding humans, the scientist doing the test said that it should be fairly easy to test this latest approach in humans. So how they're quite going to do that before they release I'm not quite sure.
A lot of people in the scientific community are continually warning about the fact that if pharmaceutical drugs, for instance, are tested on rats, that is actually a very small and suspect base of tests due to the difference in physiology between a rat and a human.
Indeed.
So whether we should have confidence that this has been tested on a rat or not, I don't know.
No.
But if we were to grow extra ears, we'd be in trouble, I think.
Indeed. Very, very quickly, the other BBC article was that the average rent paid by private tenants in England has shot up to £725 a month. This has been announced by LSL, which is a property service company. I think it's worrying in a sense that as prices go up, people will be forced to then delve into the purse of the public and claim some sort of benefit. And this concerns me simply because the more benefits we take from the government, the more we're in their pocket, which means the more dependent we become on them. And so when they start bringing in more draconian style legislation, people will be forced or feel that they are forced to carry that out because they're too concerned about losing their tax credits or whatever
help they're getting.
Help they're getting, which is
it's a serious situation.
It's a very serious situation.
The question which UK Column Live would pose is this situation one which is occurring naturally in the economic climate, or are we actually seeing a deliberate attempt by the government and the banks, of course, to skew the rental charges in order to introduce this dependency on the state? And something which has been pointed out to us by people who are renting in Plymouth is the fact that if you go and apply now for a lease on a property, it isn't simply a question of turning up with some references from good people that you're honest and trustworthy and therefore a good candidate to take on the property and pay the rent. You're now also being asked to give full disclosure of your income, and the rental companies or the agencies are making a decision on whether you can have the property based on what your declared income is. So we're now seeing that the rental agencies are almost being used as another agency of the state. Yeah,
very concerning, very concerning.
Okay. I know you're very keen to get to the last one. I've just got an eye on the thing, so I think we could jump on to the subject of aerial spraying.
Oh, okay,
if you'd be happy to do that.
Find this one. Okay, this comes from CBS. This is an international story. Basically, what is happening in Texas is they've got a problem with mosquitoes, and unfortunately, 200 people have been sick and 10 people have died, and so the local authorities there have decided they're going to spray the area with a chemical which is spark concerns that the chemical has actually got major health impacts for the people that are going to be receiving it. Interestingly enough, the area that's going to be sprayed is where George W. Bush lives, and George W. Bush's property and land will not be sprayed. So read into that what you will. And if I could just, quote from the article, both the Mayor and Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins have declared a state of emergency and voiced their support for an aerial defence. Yet even with the threat of infection, the spraying has sparked widespread opposition from people who fear the chemicals could be harmful. It's something new that has not been used in quite a number of years, said Dr. Rogers Naski of the CDC, explaining the public's worries. Anything novel comes with that unknown factor. And there's two interesting things I just want to quickly mention out of that. Firstly, a state of emergency. Now, while the deaths of 10 people is very, very concerning and it's
sad,
and it's very, and our heartfelt concerns go out to the members of those families. Spraying an area which is then going to affect thousands of people with a chemical that is unknown, or that its ability to harm is unknown, I think is a bit irresponsible. And I'd also say that describing such a chemical as being novel and that it comes with an unknown factor when you're about to spray thousands of people is, I think, also very concerning. If you're interested with the name of the chemical, it's called dual action adulticide. I think, straight out of a Terry Pratchett book or some sort of fiction. I mean, adulticide is quite concerning, considering we're mostly adults.
It's either a sick joke or it's just an accident, but it does seem rather strange to have something named like this.
Very strange, yeah.
And I believe it's toxic to fish.
It is, and of course, if you're spraying 300 feet in the air, obviously there's problems with wind and
dispersion.
I mean, how can you guarantee that substance is not going to get into the water supply?
Yeah. This probably we could just mention with an eye on the clock. The time's moving very quickly. Is the fact that we've been contacted over the past few weeks by members of the aviation fraternity who are talking to us about additives to aviation fuel, which we're finding very, very interesting. So perhaps we'll touch on that in due course.
Indeed.
But your last topic.
My last topic comes from The Guardian. I think it's a very good article, actually, and it's Totnes, the town that declared war on global capitalism. And rather than me give my opinion and so forth, I just want to quickly read from it because the article does a fantastic job. There is a lot of talk about a failure of democracy and the emptiness of what politicians call localism. But more interestingly, an emphasis on what might happen when the town's newest arrival actually opens its doors. The idea is to be prepared, says one of the people behind tonight's gathering, with some excitement, so that when they get here, things are organised. One man suggests regularly visiting Costa, ordering tap water, and then drinking it very slowly. A woman offers to paste up anti-Costa posters on the chain's windows, doggedly replacing them whenever they're removed. And a couple of people who live across the street from Costa's proposed new outlet say they'll hang protest banners, and there is a warmly received proposal of an official day of mourning because we have lost our democracy, says the local community. I just wanted to highlight this article because it's a fantastic way in which people who are living in our local rural communities especially, but also people living in cities who don't like the corporatization and this huge global economy which is now infiltrating our what used to be wonderful local economies, with the local shops and your local butchers
with
and
local
so forth,
produce.
with local produce. And it's a great example of how an organised community can actually oppose the infiltration of these major corporations. And I would suggest that if people do feel that way, that they would follow Totnes and get organised and find ways in which they could peacefully and lawfully repel the invasion of these corporations.
Well, the key statement, if we look at it from a government aspect, is we've got a government constantly saying that individuals are important, local communities are important, except it appears where one of these huge corporations moves in, whether it's Tesco or Sainsbury's, or in this case Costa, and we see these companies come in with often billions of pounds of assets or billions of dollars of assets to steamroller over local economies. So the government, of course, who's been cuddling up to these corporations, particularly over the Olympic period, is clearly not really concerned about local people. And it is interesting to see what Totnes is doing about it.
Indeed. And if I could just quickly finish with another quote, which really shows that in these times where a lot of other areas are suffering, Totnes isn't, because they've bound it together so tightly. And the quote goes, "Totnes's local economy looks to be in reasonable health, which is surely down to the fact that it is about as far from being what we now call a clone town as could be imagined."
Yeah.
And Totnes indeed is like that way. It is.
And of course Totnes also has the Totnes pound, so Totnes people can use their own currency, which is a currency they exchange for goods and services, and of course that helps keep business local for local people.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Tremendous.
Well done, Totnes.
Okay. Well, that's all there is from us today. We hope you all have a good weekend. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye from myself and
goodbye from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.